Smash that subscribe button like it owes you money. Hit like if you're ready to go places most people are afraid to look. And drop a comment if you think you can handle the truth. Because once this story starts, there's no turning back. The sirens were already fading when the body was discovered, slumped awkwardly behind the laundry intake at Ironwood Federal Penitentiary. Dawn hadn't fully broken yet, and the desert air carried a cold that felt wrong for California. Guards found him face down, wrists bound with bedsheet cord, a crude ink mark drawn across his neck. No blood, no struggle, just silence. The man was identified within minutes. Daniel Reyes, inmate number 44721, serving 12 years for armed robbery. But Reyes wasn't just another prisoner. Inside Ironwood, he was a messenger, someone who carried orders between gangs that were never supposed to speak to each other. By the time the prison went into lockdown, every cell block knew what that symbol meant. It wasn't a random killing. It was a declaration of war. Special Agent Mara Kincaid stood outside the sally port, watching the gate seal shut. She'd been with the Bureau long enough to recognize the pattern. When a body appeared in a place designed to control violence, it meant the violence had already won. Kincaid had spent the last 2 years tracking contraband routes and coded communications flowing through America's most dangerous jails. Phones smuggled in through kitchens, orders passed in legal mail, killings scheduled like business meetings. Ironwood was supposed to be different, isolated, hardened, locked down. But Reyes' death suggested something far worse. It suggested coordination. Inside Cell Block D, inmate whispers moved faster than any official report. Guards confiscated shanks, notes, even toothbrushes filed to points. Yet what they didn't find was more telling. No phone on Reyes, no note, no obvious enemy, which meant the message wasn't meant for him. It was meant for everyone else. Warden Thomas Hale called it an isolated incident, a tragedy between inmates. But when Kincaid reviewed the surveillance footage, she noticed something that didn't fit. At 2:14 a.m., cameras along the laundry corridor flickered for exactly 37 seconds. Not a power outage, not a glitch. Someone had accessed the internal system. Someone with clearance. The victim's file added another layer of unease. Reyes had been transferred 3 times in 18 months, each move justified by security concerns. In reality, he'd been shuttled like cargo, placed wherever influence was needed. He wasn't muscle. He was logistics. And logistics, in the prison underworld, meant money. Kincaid met her partner, investigative journalist Evan Cole, in a quiet room just off the admin wing. Cole had spent a decade uncovering corruption in county jails and private prisons across the Midwest. He'd lost sources. He'd lost friends. What he hadn't lost was his instinct. And his instinct told him Reyes was a trigger, not a target. Cole laid out photos on the table. Grainy still from confiscated phones. Tattoos repeated across facilities thousands of miles apart. A crown. A spider web. 3 dots arranged like a triangle. These weren't random gang marks. They were identifiers, membership badges in a loose coalition that crossed racial lines and traditional rivalries. On the street, there were enemies. Inside, there were shareholders. The gangs don't run these prisons, Cole said quietly. They franchise them. Kincaid didn't respond right away. She was focused on one image in particular. Reyes, weeks before his death, standing in the yard beside a corrections officer. Officer Mark Delaney, clean record, former Marine, 2 tours overseas. Delaney had been the one to find the body. The official timeline said Delaney was doing a routine check when he stumbled onto Reyes. But surveillance placed him in the laundry corridor minutes before the cameras went dark. When questioned, Delaney said he was responding to a noise complaint. No report filed. No witness. Just his word. As lockdown stretched into its 3rd day, tensions inside Ironwood escalated. Meals were skipped. Cells were flooded. Fights broke out in showers where cameras couldn't see. One inmate was rushed to medical with stab wounds that looked surgical, precise, controlled, intentional. The gangs weren't lashing out. They were enforcing discipline. Kincaid requested phone records for every staff member on duty that night. The response was delayed, then partially denied. Privacy concerns, union rules, administrative review. Every roadblock felt deliberate, as if the institution itself was resisting investigation. Meanwhile, Cole received an anonymous message on an encrypted app he hadn't used in months. No greeting, no explanation, just 4 words: Ironwood is compromised. Attached was a spreadsheet, dates, inmate numbers, transfer approvals, commissary balances. When Cole cross-referenced the data, a pattern emerged. Inmates connected to the same network were being moved strategically, positioned to control kitchens, libraries, maintenance crews. Places where information and contraband flowed freely. Reyes' name appeared repeatedly, always just before transfer. He wasn't just a messenger. He was an auditor. That night, Kincaid walked the perimeter alone, the floodlights casting long shadows across the razor wire. She thought about the families who believed prison walls kept danger contained, about the judges who handed down sentences assuming the system would do the rest, about how naive that belief had become. When the autopsy report came back, it confirmed what she already suspected. Reyes hadn't fought back. He'd been compliant. The cause of death was asphyxiation, slow and deliberate. Whoever killed him wanted time, wanted certainty. The final blow came just before midnight. A junior analyst flagged an anomaly buried deep in Ironwood's maintenance logs, a locked basement door beneath the administration wing. Sealed years ago after a flood, had been accessed the same night Reyes died. No work order, no explanation. Kincaid and Cole stood at the top of the concrete steps as guards forced the rusted door open. The smell hit first: damp air, oil, and something metallic. Flashlights cut through the darkness, revealing rows of shelves, old equipment, and at the far wall, a makeshift office. Maps covered the concrete. Prison layout from across the country. Names circled in red. Dates. Symbols matching the tattoos Cole had documented. This wasn't just about Ironwood. It was a command center. The room beneath Ironwood wasn't supposed to exist. According to official blueprints, the basement had been decommissioned after a plumbing failure years earlier, sealed off and forgotten. But the maps on the walls told a different story. Federal prisons, state facilities, county jails, all connected by arrows, codes, and dates that stretched back more than a decade. Someone hadn't just been running a gang inside Ironwood. They'd been coordinating an empire. Mara Kincaid felt the weight of it settle in her chest. This wasn't a case anymore. It was a system. On a metal desk in the corner sat 3 bonophones, neatly arranged, batteries removed. Beside them, a ledger written in block letters. No names, just inmate numbers and dollar amounts. Commissary funds, outside deposits. Money that flowed in small, invisible streams until it became a river. Reyes' number appeared on nearly every page, followed by check marks and dates. He'd been confirming deliveries, verifying loyalty, and somewhere along the line, he'd become a liability. Within hours, Ironwood was crawling with federal agents. The warden was sidelined. Staff were pulled for questioning. Officer Mark Delaney didn't show up for his interview. By sunrise, his apartment was found empty. Bed made, closet cleared, laptop gone. No sign of forced entry. Delaney hadn't run in a panic. He'd left prepared. Evan Cole published nothing. Not yet. He knew better. Exposing this before understanding its full scope would get people killed. Instead, he followed the money. The ledger numbers matched deposits to shell companies registered in Nevada and Delaware, corporate ghosts with no employees and no offices. From there, the trail led overseas into crypto wallets that pulsed with activity every time a prison went into lockdown. The gangs weren't just controlling prisons. They were monetizing chaos. Inside Ironwood, retaliation came fast. An inmate informant was found hanging in his cell, ruled a suicide within minutes. Another was transferred out before Kincaid could speak to him. Paperwork moved at impossible speed, approval signed by officials who claimed they'd never seen the forms. Someone high up was clearing the board. Kincaid pushed back, demanding emergency authority to freeze staff transfers and seize internal communications. The response from headquarters was careful, measured, and useless. Jurisdictional concerns, interagency coordination, political sensitivities. The usual words that meant one thing: slow down. She didn't. Her break came from an unexpected place. A prison nurse named Lila Moreno requested protective custody after her shift. She'd been at Ironwood for 6 years, long enough to know when things didn't add up. Moreno told Kincaid about inmates who arrived with injuries already documented as treated, about prescriptions that appeared in charts without doctor signatures, about a storage room near medical that was always locked, always guarded by the same two officers. Moreno had once seen Reyes there, calm, unafraid, speaking softly to a man in civilian clothes who definitely wasn't staff. That man, according to badge records, didn't exist. As Kincaid arranged for Moreno's transfer, Cole received another message on the encrypted app. This one included a video, shaky footage, shot from behind a vent. It showed the basement office weeks before the murder. Reyes stood at the center, pointing at maps, while men in guard uniforms listened. Not all of them, but enough. At the edge of the frame, half in shadow, was Delaney. Reyes wasn't taking orders. He was giving them. The implication was devastating. The gangs hadn't infiltrated the prison system. They'd partnered with it. Corrupt officers moved drugs and phones. Administrators approved transfers. In exchange, violence stayed controlled, predictable, profitable, until Reyes decided someone was skimming off the top. That night, Moreno never made it to protective custody. Her transport vehicle was rerouted due to a clerical error. By the time it was corrected, she was gone. The van was found abandoned near Service Road, doors open, engine cold. No blood, no struggle, just silence. Kincaid stared at the empty seat where Moreno should have been and felt something shift inside her. This wasn't about justice anymore. It was about survival. Cole finally went public with a partial story, careful not to name names. He framed it as an investigation into systemic corruption, hinted at coordinated gang activity across multiple facilities. The response was immediate. Media outlets exploded. Politicians demanded answers. And behind the scenes, pressure mounted. Cole's apartment was broken into. Nothing stolen. Just a message written on his bathroom mirror in red marker. You don't see the whole board. Ironwood wasn't the only prison heating up. Within 48 hours, 3 inmates were killed in separate facilities across 2 states, all bearing the same crude ink mark across the neck. The signature wasn't a warning anymore. It was a countdown. Kincaid traced the pattern and realized the truth too late. The killings weren't punishment. They were cleanup. Anyone connected to Reyes' network, auditors, messengers, potential whistleblowers, was being erased. And the person orchestrating it wasn't hiding inside a cell. She finally got confirmation from an internal affairs source who shouldn't have talked. The basement access logs had been altered, but not perfectly. One ID card appeared again and again, across facilities, across years. A regional oversight official with authority to audit prisons nationwide. A man who could walk into any facility without raising suspicion. His name sat at the top of the list like a judge's signature. Deputy Director Alan Cross. As Kincaid and Cole prepared to move, a final alert flashed across Kincaid's phone. An inmate transfer approved minutes earlier. Destination, Ironwood. Inmate number unfamiliar, but the notes chilled her blood. Former federal prosecutor. Incarcerated on corruption charges. Scheduled to testify in 90 days. Reyes' replacement had arrived, and the war was far from over. By the time the transport bus rolled through Ironwood's gates, the prison was already braced for impact. Guards stood rigid, hands hovering near batons. Cameras tracked every inch of the yard. The new inmate stepped down in chains, posture straight despite the weight of them. His name was Victor Hale, former federal prosecutor, once praised for dismantling organized crime networks, now convicted of taking bribes from the very systems he claimed to fight. To the outside world, Hale was a fallen crusader. Inside Ironwood, he was leverage. Mara Kincaid watched from the observation deck as Hale was processed. She knew the transfer wasn't coincidence. It was bait. Someone wanted to see who would move to protect him, who would move to silence him, and whoever made the first move would expose themselves. Deputy Director Alan Cross arrived that afternoon, unannounced. No press, no entourage, just a badge that opened every door. Cross spoke calmly to the warden, toured the cell blocks, shook hands with officers. To anyone else, it looked like damage control. To Kincaid, it looked like ownership. Evan Cole, operating on instinct more than permission, followed Cross's movements through access logs and internal memos. The pattern was unmistakable. Every facility where Cross had conducted an oversight visit experienced a spike in coordinated violence shortly after. Not riots, not chaos, targeted removals. Clean and efficient, Cross didn't manage prisons. He pruned them. That night, Hale was placed in protective custody. Or what passed for it? A single cell near medical, guarded by officers Kincaid didn't recognize. She requested their names. The request was denied. Cole received one final message on the encrypted app. No text, just a location and a time. Basement level. Midnight. Against protocol and common sense, they went. The basement office had been stripped bare. Maps gone. Phones gone. But someone had missed one thing. A file taped beneath the desk, hidden behind exposed piping. Inside were transcripts of recorded calls, not from inmates, but from administrators, politicians, donors. Conversations about contracts, private prison expansions, budget incentives tied directly to inmate population and incident rates. Controlled violence increased funding. Fear justified isolation units. Gangs weren't a flaw in the system. They were a feature. Footsteps echoed behind them. Cross didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He spoke like a man explaining gravity. The gangs provided order. The prisons provided profit. He provided oversight. Reyes had threatened that balance by documenting everything, by hinting he might trade information for protection. So Reyes was removed. So were the others. Nothing stops, Cross said. It only changes hands. Kincaid recorded every word. Up above, alarm screamed. Hale's cell door had been opened. By the time guards arrived, it was too late. Hale lay on the floor, the same crude ink mark across his neck. No weapon found. No witnesses willing to speak. The signature had come full circle. Cross was detained quietly, escorted out under the cover of administrative review. No handcuffs. No charges. Not yet. The evidence would take time to process. Time the system was very good at stretching thin. Cole's story detonated anyway. Documents leaked. Audio clips surfaced. Congressional hearings were announced. Heads rolled at the lower levels, wardens, officers, contractors. Enough accountability to satisfy the public. Not enough to dismantle the machine. Ironwood returned to routine. Months later, Kincaid stood outside another facility, another desert, another set of razor wire fences humming in the heat. Cross's case was stalled. Procedural delays. Missing files. Witnesses recanting. Moreno's body was never found. The system endured. Then, 3 months after Reyes' death, a body was discovered in a prison hundreds of miles away. Same positioning, same mark, different gang affiliation. But this time, the victim wasn't an inmate. It was a corrections officer. And etched into the concrete beside him were 4 words, written carefully, deliberately. Balances shifted. Somewhere, the network was still alive. Still adapting. Still watching. They thought the war was over because the man at the center was gone. But the truth was far worse. The prison gang wars never needed a single leader. They needed silence. And if this story got under your skin, stay close, because the next one goes even deeper.